I didn't want to argue. Contentiousness is a sin. I'm a Mormon.
Okay. The sad thing is we all know this lady in our ward. We all know this lady in our ward, and frankly, we all know this guy. Hey guys, welcome back to WardRadio. I'm your host, Cardinellis, and today we're going to be reacting to some really, really funny posts that came out on X. Now, usually when all of a sudden my phone starts blowing up with a bunch of notifications from X, it's one of two things. My buddy Quakus said something crazy and everybody's tagging me to quote, "Come get your boy," which, believe it or not, I don't control my friends. They are my friends who are their own sentient beings with their own free agency and their own life choices and their own lives to lead. And I fully support them in as much as I can in exercising their free agency, hopefully to their benefit and society's benefit as well. But the second thing is when something cool happens. And in this case, I would actually say something cool happened. Now, I don't know. Let me go to the original post here. I don't know who Ziathon is, primary care doctor and LDS member with 60 followers. But I don't know if he created it or he just was the first to post it. But he directed to me a really interesting piece of media here that I think is completely germane to the conversation that we're having online. Recently, I was embroiled in a little bit of an LDX controversy, questioning, all right, current leadership in the church. And people ask me like, okay, well, define that. Well, I think this video actually defined it better than I ever could. And so we're going to watch it and see what you guys think. Because I was tagged in it and it got my attention. So first off, without any further ado, let's just dive right in. Okay, so here's our boy Xanthan's post. Here we go.
Avoiding contention helps unite us. Through peace, we become one.
My son's teacher told the class some boys have uteruses. I didn't want to argue. Contentiousness is a sin. I'm a Mormon. In ward council, I tried to quote the family proclamation. It got awkward. Someone said it's not canon. I dropped it. I'm a Mormon.
At ward movie night, we watched a documentary about queer dolphins. I didn't protest. The spirit withdraws when we fight. I'm a Mormon. My daughter was chastised for not slow dancing with a trans boy. I told her to not be judgmental. Peace matters most. I'm a Mormon.
The stake hosted a queer inclusion night with rainbow wristbands for the youth. President Nelson said to be a peacemaker. I brought cookies. I'm a Mormon. I believe the doctrine hasn't changed, but everyone acts like it has. And I don't want to be a Pharisee. I'm a Mormon.
The bishop asked if our Relief Society could co-host a queer interfaith drumming circle. I offered my living room. I'm a Mormon.
Okay. All right. So we're just going to go over this one by one because I got in a lot of trouble. For saying we've had the weakest leadership in church history, but it should be over in 10 to 15 years. Now, sure, whether that was inartful and me not talking about what I actually meant by that, because there is a very widespread spectrum from Russell M. Nelson all the way down to, I don't know, the senior companion in some companionship of the Los Angeles mission somewhere, okay, with all kinds of stake presidents, elders quorum presidents, Relief Society presidents, Area 70s, all along the way. But there is a culture that is created by all of the above. And it's the church culture that we all share. It's the mutual pool that we swim in, at least here in North America. Every area kind of has its unique culture. There was a unique culture, church culture in Argentina when I served there. There's unique church culture here in North America, one that's slightly different in the Northeast than is in the West. But I do believe most of us in North America have experienced this video. We're going to go through each one of these little examples just one by one really fast and then talk about it.
Avoiding contention helps unite us. Through peace, we become one.
Okay, so these are a lot of what some would consider the bastardizations of the doctrine of peacemaking. And that's a big point of contention right now in the church, is the very definition of contention. In fact, I think it's a very interesting question that this Xanthon guy starts out with, saying, could we get some parameters on what we mean and don't mean by avoiding contention? Because this is dangled over our heads a lot. It seems like a lot of people, when they want to avoid a necessary but uncomfortable conversation, run for the hills under the auspices of avoiding contention. We should avoid unnecessary contention, but the question is there sometimes a necessary contention? Because we have two competing commandments right now. We're commanded to delight in truth, but denounce deception. Denunciation, can that be uncomfortable? Obviously, discomfort cannot be the rubric that we're using here. So in a very humorous way, this Xanthon guy has posted and asked the question, could we get some parameters on what we mean and don't mean by avoiding contention? I'll be honest, we're probably not going to get very specific parameters from members of the church, nor do I think those necessarily exist outside of prayerful consideration, obviously. But I do think we can start a conversation to hone in on what some of those parameters are and glean some data from talking to other people that share mutual experiences with us. So anyway, here, let's just keep going. There's a big straw man. This is probably the biggest straw man that they start out with. And I love it. We're just going to burn through these one by one.
Avoiding contention helps unite us.
Okay. It's not avoiding contention that which unites us. Zion is emergent. It's as we become of one body and one mind. That doesn't mean one mind politically, obviously. That doesn't mean one mind in terms of who we vote for in our sports teams and so on and so forth. But we do need to be of one heart and one mind. Whether or not avoiding contention is the ticket to get there, that's up for grabs. Let's keep going.
Through peace, we become one.
Yes, that is true.
My son's teacher told the class some boys have uteruses. I didn't want to argue. Contentiousness is a sin. I'm a Mormon.
Okay. The sad thing is we all know this lady in our ward. We all know this lady in our ward. And frankly, we all know this guy in our ward. All right. We've gone from like Papa Osler to the enthusiastic non-combative Relief Society president here, all just in 15 seconds. I love it. But let's keep going. Next example.
Contentiousness is a sin. I'm a Mormon. In ward council, I tried to quote the family proclamation. It got awkward. Someone said it's not canon. I dropped it. I'm a Mormon.
The sad thing is, this actually looks like a girlfriend that I had when I was in BYU. This is how wildly accurate this AI is. And down to the awkward laugh of, contentiousness is a sin. And this is where we really have to start getting these parameters that Xanthon wanted us to hone in on. It's not necessarily contentiousness being the sin if we're supposed to contend for the faith. We know that the spirit of contention is of the devil, which means if you're seeking out contention because you enjoy it, which actually, frankly, I think is a problem on LDX. And I think that there's a lot of people on social media that just enjoy it too much. They don't engage in it as a necessary evil. They don't view humor as a stepping stone towards serious philosophical advancements. They just enjoy the contention. And I don't understand it. I think it's gross. But who knows? God made them the way they made them, and maybe that's their cross to bear that they have to work on getting over, just like I have problems that I have to get over. But I definitely think that the absence of contention doesn't always mean peace. It sometimes just means problems festering for a really, really long time and only getting worse, which is a little bit generational. I think we're getting out of it. I think it's probably going to be out of our system within a decade. Okay. Millennials, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, when studied, they crave authenticity. The silent generation, boomers, older, post-war generations, and even pre-war generations before they passed, but we were able to study them, at least with marketing data and personal interest surveys and public opinion polls. They highly prioritized loyalty, both brand loyalty, relational loyalty, over authenticity, while younger generations prioritized authenticity. So obviously the generation that prioritizes loyalty most is going to subvert personal opinions in order to self-perceive and virtue signal their loyalty, while younger generations are going to subvert loyalty in order to virtue signal authenticity. So every generation always has conflict with its own parental generation, but this one was very unique at a time when the internet was happening, which obviously augments authenticity. So this is really great. We're actually cruising. Let's keep going.
At Ward movie night, we watched a documentary about queer dolphins. I didn't protest. The spirit withdraws when we fight. I'm a Mormon.
Okay. I didn't protest. The spirit withdraws when we fight. Now, obviously, this whole I am a Mormon, I assume that it's a humorous nod to the I am a Mormon campaign, which was popular during, I believe it was Gordon B. Hinckley's presidency about 10, 15 years ago. But pay attention to what he said. Like, the spirit withdraws when we fight. The spirit withdraws when we fight unnecessarily. And I think that we have to really learn to use adverbs in the gospel of Jesus Christ, because he didn't say, judge ye not, meaning be sterile of all judgment and just a little bit of phytoplankton washed in the ocean wherever the water directs you. No, we know from the JST, the Joseph Smith translation, commentary on the Bible from Joseph Smith, that is the intent of that verse is judge ye not unrighteously, just as Jesus Christ said, take the beam out of your eye before you worry about the mote in somebody else's eye. Focus on yourself. As Jonah Barnes says, there's only two types of sins, the sins that are your business and my sins that are my business. I butchered that quote, but you can watch the video. He's said it multiple times. I think when we forget that use of adverbs, to judge ye not unrighteously or to contend unnecessarily, that's when we go astray from the doctrine of the Church of Jesus Christ. But in our wealth, it is easy to become this guy, thinking simply that the spirit withdraws when we fight. Now, when I say this guy, yes, I know that it's an AI generated image. All right. I'm saying this avatar of the guy we all know. Let's continue.
Fight. I'm a Mormon. My daughter was chastised for not slow dancing with a trans boy.
That actually, I think, was a real thing, if I'm not mistaken.
I told her to not be judged.
I refer to Greg Madsen, though. He keeps up with all this.
It's mental. Peace matters most. I'm a Mormon.
Now, this is what's so interesting. I told her not to be judgmental. Peace matters most. The number one thing that secular progressivism does, that wokeism does, which bastardizes liberalism, is to weaponize empathy. And that's also to weaponize doctrine against contending for the faith by saying any contention is obviously unrighteous contention. So super interesting takes. Whoever wrote this script, it's actually pretty simple, but kind of profound. I hope it wasn't AI, or else that would blow my mind and scare me a little bit simultaneously. But let's keep going.
The stake hosted a queer inclusion night with rainbow wristbands for the youth. President Nelson said to be a peacemaker. I brought cookies. I'm a Mormon. I believe the doctrine hasn't changed, but everyone acts like it has. And I don't want to be a Pharisee. I'm a Mormon.
The bishop asked if our Relief Society could co-host a queer interfaith drumming circle.
Okay, that's actually just funny. And actually, that one I would probably go to. A queer interfaith drumming circle. Count me in. That's just hippie. The 60s are back. The 90s are back, baby. You could convince me to go with that guy to that drumming circle. So the comments are actually pretty hilarious. And a second video came out. Of course, our boy Lego Joseph Smith says, it's perfect. I hate it. Which I thought was so just absolutely awesome. And then the other comments, which you guys can check out, I'll have the post in the description of this video available. Some of them were equally as funny. Now, nobody's talked about it, and I saw the original video made it onto YouTube with only like 15 views at the time of this recording, so I'm gonna have to put that link in there as well. But as I did show prep for this video, I was pleasantly surprised to find that not only was there the first video, but it looks like there was a second, and I haven't watched this one yet. So we're going to do this in real time together really fast. We're going to do this in real time together, see what our boy here says. Again, he questions, Zyanthan says, this is all quite silly, a low-effort hyperbolic parody, but evokes piercingly real questions rarely said aloud. 1, can peacemakers become Trojan horses for subversive ideologies? The short answer is yes. I think some people call it the philosophical tolerance paradox, where if tolerance becomes your guiding light in a society, you accidentally become tolerant of intolerance itself and intolerant views that end up turning around and restricting your tolerance and destroying the very tolerance that let intolerance in the door. So it's like a self-destructive view. At some point, in order to maintain tolerance, you have to define it better. What do you mean? Like pluralistic freedom of religion, pluralistic freedom of speech. Okay, if you want to maintain those things, you need to maintain a broader overarching ethos, such as the Judeo-Christian work ethic and Judeo-Christian political view that has permeated through American culture. And that needs to be an umbrella that covers all the individual parts of the pluralist society and is maintained through intolerance, rejection of blasphemy, rejection of people that erode that social fabric, that umbrella that covers everybody. Hence laws against, for example, treason. The Judeo-Christian ethic depends a lot upon a dutiful adherence and loyalty to the in-group. That's why treason is one of the few things that's actually mentioned in the Constitution as a crime, if we're speaking politically, but also one of the few things referenced in Scripture. It's not as cut and dry as sometimes people think when you take these principles to the logical conclusion. So anyway, he says, can peacemakers become Trojan horses for subversive ideologies? Yes, absolutely. In fact, I think one of the most effective, one of the reasons why wokeism, as it is called, or secular progressivism, as others call it, has been so effective is because it did indeed weaponize empathy. And that's one of the most potent poison pills that you can inject into a successful society whose liberal Judeo-Christianism has actually made it tolerant and successful, is weaponized empathy. So can peacemakers become Trojan horses for subversive ideologies, ones that cause real damage to families, dividing them, and congregations? Yes, I don't know a congregation that is fully recovered from the cruelty of, for sure, one side, sometimes both sides, of the COVID argument. I don't know a single congregation that really got there. And if you were in one of those congregations, you know exactly what I'm talking about, that really got there with the maskers and the non-maskers, the call the health department on your bishopers and don't call the health department on the people that don't stand 6 feet away while singing, or we all know what these two camps were, and the wards that went to war with each other. I don't know one that has fully and completely recovered yet. If you do, I gladly seek your story in the comments below. Second question he asks, furthermore, among faithful Latter-day Saints who accept the church's teachings, why do some believe our leaders have spoken with sufficient clarity on today's moral challenges, while others feel a growing need for clearer guidance, stronger boundaries, and more visible defense of revealed truths. That's because we always love to overlook the talks that challenge our worldviews and augment the ones that support our worldviews. I think some of that is just natural human condition. Also, I think to a certain extent, there is a big problem with detached leadership in our church in some areas. And by that, I mean housing has become wildly unaffordable for millennials that usually would be in their like third or fourth child if they were following the trajectory of their parents in terms of family creation and childbirth and home ownership and so on and so forth. But now look at the statistics on first home purchasing and the average age of first home purchased. Look at the statistics on the average age of a woman giving birth for the first time in America. These stats have spiked up 7, 10 years. Okay. And in those 7 or 10 years, people that usually would have retired out of their position at head of the company or head of the congregation or head of the volunteer group didn't and remained in power with their worldviews and their formative years still informing in the same way they informed over those 7 to 10 years previously, their actions and their decision making. I mean, it's pretty wild. You look at the church in America at large. I'm saying like the body of Christ, not just our church, include the Catholics, the Protestants, the Presbyterians, the Jehovah's Witnesses, the et al. I was reading a stat with another Christian podcaster the other day that blew my mind. And this was like 3 years ago, so the stat's even worse now. That something along the lines of like 85% of the pastors in America are over the age of 63. These are retirement age people that should be collecting Social Security, okay? But they're still pastoring congregations, oftentimes in the absence of other people with training that could step up and fill their shoes. So when you ask the question, why do some people believe our leaders haven't spoken with sufficient clarity on today's moral challenges? Is, well, because I think sometimes they're detached to some of them. I think a lot of boomers vilified pornography over-vilified pornography, I would say, and engaged in shame-based coping mechanisms for lack of familiarity with the internet. Their lives didn't have to adapt for much longer than maybe millennials' lives or less affluent people's lives had to adapt to the internet faster. So they didn't understand it as much. So, they couldn't empathize maybe because that was just maybe not the sin of their generation. It used to be to encounter pornography, you had to go really far out of your way to weird movie theaters or subscriptions that your mailman would look at in the black envelope and be like, oh, here you go, Frank. You know, it was a sin that could not be performed in as much secret as it can now. So it was over-vilified. Financial struggles also. During COVID, 93% of the SBA loans went to boomers. And it was the first time that the working class and younger people actually transferred wealth upwards towards their parents' generation. Traditionally, wealth has always gone from the older to the younger. That's just the way it goes. But between 2019 and 2021, there was actually a transfer of wealth from the younger to the older that was greater than the transfer of wealth of people from the older to the younger. The tide of the financial Mississippi River actually reversed for a short enough period of time that people noticed, oh my gosh, the stream is actually flowing upriver. Like, think how monumental that is. And so, of course, the people that are downstream in that river, that are reliant upon the water that the river is going to bring, when all of a sudden it starts flowing backwards, they're going to notice first. So do I think, why do some people believe our leaders have spoken insufficient clarity on today's moral challenges? Because maybe the ones they've talked about, they have spoken on more. I think a wealthy Gen Xer who works for the State Department isn't allowed to have social media and is 25 years into his job that has made six figures, netting him millions of dollars of personal worth. I don't think he understands the struggles of a guy, for example, who's concerned about algorithm changes on YouTube and X because he's a young budding marketer and that's how he makes money for his family. And besides the social contentions on X, where he's trying to raise his young daughters and sons with smartphones, which are ubiquitous in our society and cannot be avoided, he's also concerned about how do I provide for my family in this increasingly competitive atmosphere that is constantly changing? And also, what are the ethics of these things? Quentin L. Cook actually did an amazing talk to the Institute of Idaho, was it? We're going to do an episode on this coming up pretty soon. But he talked about the ethics of anonymity online, which was a very, very germane, very relative, very modern topic that I was glad to see church leaders talking about. So I think, Ziathon, I would answer your question saying, why do some people believe our leaders have spoken with sufficient clarity on today's moral challenges while others feel a growing need for clearer guidance, stronger boundaries, and more visible defense of revealed truths? I think a lot of that is actually just plain old generational. I really think that is. And, you know, for the guy whose struggle or the woman whose struggle is, I don't know, domestic violence, I think the church has made its position known on domestic violence. Whereas the person who's on LDX all day, maybe the church's position on anonymity in the digital sphere is lesser known. But that would be an angustia, as we say in Spanish. That would be an inquietud. Gosh, how do you say this in English? That would be a concern, shall we say, of a younger generation. So anyway, questions 3 and 4 before we go to this video. Can we believe in prophetic revelation while also believing that God expects the saints to speak up when clarity is needed? Yes, we can believe in both, if I'm reading that correctly. And if we stay silent out of deference, are we withholding the very input the brethren need to act? That's a very good question that honestly I think is going away. I think that's completely generational. I've spoken with a lot of men and women who assist in video content. I live here in Los Angeles. I have a bunch of Hollywood buddies that make turnover films for everything from streaming platforms, for television shows, and I enjoy working with these cats down here. Also scattered all up the I-15 corridor. I have friends that are videographers, sound engineers, previs people, editors, so on and so forth, that work both in Salt Lake City and in Los Angeles, doing all kind of things from TV commercials to documentaries, just all of the above. Okay. And many of them have had contracts making content for the church, both in official and unofficial capacity, some of them even with the 12. And a consistent, I wouldn't call it a complaint, but a consistent observation is that younger apostles never want to overshadow older apostles. And if, for example, one apostle has a great personality, goes to the, I don't know, throw a country out there, the Dominican Republic, gives a bunch of great firesides, crushes it, have some just tear-jerker moments from the pulpit that are amazing, and is lucky enough to have a videographer that, you know, catches him shaking hands and kissing babies and just hugging the widows and the fatherless and just crushing it as an example of Christ-like love and apostolic blessing and so on and so forth. They're going to get one video out where he does well, but then they're going to feel uncomfortable posting another video where he does well the next day, and then another one where he does well the day after that on the church's feed, because they would feel like they would need to get through the other 11 apostles first. And I, as a younger apostle, would never want to overshadow them, which is just fraught and riddled as a modus operandi just fraught and riddled with problems. Principle being, it's like a baseball team. Your pitcher can't always hit home runs, guys. Like, what? We can have pinch hitters, like, I mean, I'm sorry. Let's just be honest here. Like, if you were a betting man, who do you think would probably provide generally better content? Elder Holland or Elder insert the name of the guy that you can barely remember until it's conference and he reads off of a teleprompter, the same teleprompter the whole time, because as much as he's a great church leader and has many other strengths, maybe public speaking isn't one of them. Do you really have to like try and hope these guys hit home runs? Or can we not just, I don't know, give every apostle their own channel and let people choose the ones that they like and they want to follow and the ones that they don't? Like, I mean, there's all kinds of better ways of handling this than they do. But I think the answer to your question is, if we stay silent out of deference, are we withholding the very input the brethren need to act? I actually find the brethren, if we're referring to the Q15 in our church, the first presidency in the 12, I think those guys are actually the most in the know in our church. We have the reverse of the Peter principle. In our church, our problem is middle management. Our problem is the bureaucracy in the middle. I think our bishops, freaking toughest calling in the church, man. I don't know. I bet your prophet's up there too. But you got to get all the way here. You know what I'm saying? I don't think even stake presidents work as hard as bishops do. And I know for a fact area authorities don't. So, yeah, I'm sorry. Sorry, I shouldn't say that. But we all know anybody that's, in fact, I would actually take it to the bank. If you are an area authority or you're a family member of an area authority, that area authority most likely was a bishop first, maybe even a stake president after that. Who knows? Maybe even a mission president. Ask that person who's made it to area authority what was harder work and what took more emotional bandwidth and emotional intelligence and just more hard drive space in your dome. Ask them of all four callings they've had: area authority, stake president, what other temple or mission president, and bishop. Ask them which one was harder. Guaranteed 9 out of 10, barring any kind of odd situation, is going to say bishop was the toughest. So, to answer your question, Ziathon, can we believe in prophetic? Oh, sorry. If we stay silent out of deference, are we withholding the very input the brethren need to act? No, I think the brethren are actually very in the know. Our problem oftentimes is a paid bureaucracy that runs far more than it should. In 1977, Spencer W. Kimball formed the professional class of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in the church office building in order to be an apparatus that assisted the priesthood in executing its calling. However, it's grown so large and slow and incompetent in some regards, not in all. There are tons of church office building employees who are dutiful, amazing people that I have met, and I have nothing but respect for them. However, as an organization as a whole, in many of the most important aspects of our faith, for example, social media for young men, okay, the bureaucracy has become a stumbling block instead of an empowering block, okay? And its slowness has cost us. And instead of being something that assists the priesthood in executing callings, I sometimes question whether or not it's like telling the priesthood what to do. A lot of people have expressed that sentiment. Okay. Like, is the tail wagging the dog, or is the dog wagging the tail, or now is just the tail just a ball and chain that's not letting us do anything? These are legitimate questions to ask. And I trust both in God to help lead us out of this, and also in the good people in these organizations, both of priesthood leadership and the church office building, to slowly fix these problems. Okay. But I really think you don't need to worry, and you don't need to flatter yourself. I think the average member of our church sometimes flatters themselves into thinking that like they're the only people that know something and they got to speak up. Like, I'm all about actually speaking up and raising your voice. But I'm also keenly aware that oftentimes, like, we all need to take a little bit of humble pie and realize sometimes these people got it, and maybe that obnoxious comment online actually wasn't necessary because you're like the 15th person that said it. So anyway, without any further ado, I'm sorry we went down this rabbit hole here. I'm surprised how long we talked. We're gonna play this second one and see what we got to hear about Mormon peacemakers.
Avoiding contention helps unite us. As we become peacemakers, we unite as one.
Geez, man, that guy actually like legit looks like somebody's bishop.
At the Ward trunk or treat, the bishop dressed as a gender-fluid unicorn and bore his testimony. I didn't want to ruin the spirit. I'm a Mormon.
Dude, actually, I've heard in, I'm not going to name the city or the municipality, that there was actually, that for some people in Nevada, this hits far too close to home.
My son came home from primary with a certificate of divine fluidity. It had glitter. I put it on the fridge. I'm a Mormon.
The Ward Christmas program replaced Away in a Manger with Assigned at the Manger. I hummed along, I'm a Mormon.
The youth speaker said the stripling warriors fought for gender expression. I nodded. The spirit can't dwell in conflict.
Oh, you know, I got to tell you, actually, with homeboy Pagan showing up at BYU as exposed on Quick Show, saying that every time you hear about iniquity in the Book of Mormon, you need to interpret that as progressive inequality. That actually, I can see why this guy scripted this.
I'm a Mormon. My daughter came home from activity days with a new name, Rex. She said she's a boy now. I avoid contention. I'm a Mormon.
The EQ president shared a TikTok on gender-affirming parenting during his lesson. I nodded along. Kindness is never contentious. I'm a Mormon.
Okay. That's the crux of the argument. I nodded along. Kindness is never contentious. Where's his book? The Antichrist playbook that I wrote the foreword to was a great example of this exact thing. Oh man, I think it's right up there. I'm going to find it. You guys got to check it out on plainandprecioustruths.com. I interviewed the author who actually was in a ward struggling with the exact same thing. And he gave a really, really strong rubric for how he thought that could be approached ethically. I highly recommend you guys check that on your way out. Speaking of on your way out, let's finish this video.
My home teacher now identifies as an Anglican celestial demiboy. I use his pronouns. That's how we avoid contention. I'm a Mormon.
Oh, man. A demiboy. Okay, I confess. I never heard that one. However, I will say that
Avoiding contention.
Other than obvious verbiage like demiboy and stuff like that I've never heard, we have all heard this kind of nomenclature, this kind of speech, this kind of verbiage out of members of our church. And we've all intued that it's not right. So I think that this has been a product of two things. It's easy to blame leadership when we don't want to take personal responsibility, but the truth is, what is our leadership other than a representation of ourselves? We have lay clergy, a volunteer clergy. We pick our leadership from amongst ourselves. Therefore, our leadership, whether we like it or not, as a people, present company excluded, of course, is oftentimes more a mirror image of ourselves than we feel comfortable admitting. Therefore, anything that we don't like about this video, sometimes we need to self-reflect on how much of this is actually verbiage we use and we empower. So anyway, I think the conversation we wanted to have coming into this video has been had. I think Ziathon, I don't know the first thing about the Ziathon guy, but I thought this was really, really funny. And I think he tagged a lot of the right people here to hopefully get this out there. And I want to hear what you guys have to say about this video, because it was a masterclass in LDS suburban niceness culture. and the pitfalls therein. So let's keep this conversation going. Please let us know in the comments below where you think I go wrong, where you think they go wrong, any insights that you have to give. Let's talk. And as always, for this and more, please make sure you guys check us out at WardRadio.com.